Hey everybody, KC here. So I wanted to follow up on yesterday's FaceTime, which I did both before and after seeing Camelot at Lincoln Center, because the more I thought about the show, which I think has its flaws, the book by Aaron Sorkin, he has rewritten the original book while the music by Lerner Loewe stays intact. I thought there's some really interesting business lessons there that I wanted to share with you. Now, one of the things that Sorkin wanted to do is he wanted to strip away the mysticism and the magic from the show so it seemed more grounded. Now, you may remember the story of King Arthur and the sword and the stone, that the reason he becomes king is he's the only person who's able to actually pull the sword from the stone. And he is, by proclamation, he is made the king. And at one point, he's explaining this to Guinevere, who's a much stronger and more proactive character in this show than in other versions of it. He says, I was the 10,000th person to try to pull the sword from the stone, and I'm the one who got it out. And Guinevere basically looks at him and says, all that really means is that the 9,999 people who came before you, they loosened it for you. He says, do you believe that? She says, I do. And she looks at him and says, do you believe that? And he says, I do. Because Arthur is smart enough to realize that leaders are only as great as the people who make them possible. There are a lot of leaders who think, they have this God-given leadership ability and everybody should follow them because somehow they are exceptional. But real leaders understand that they're only as good as the people who make them possible. There's another discussion that makes its way through the show about the relative merits of leading by appealing to people's aspirations as opposed to leading by appealing to people's fears. Now, I don't know about you, but the people I've worked for in my life in business, the people who appealed to my aspirations were far more likely to get me to buy in than the people who tried to lead by appealing to my fears. So if you don't do this way, you're going to get fired. That kind of thing. I think leading by appealing to people's aspirations is a far better way to go. And we all know people, both on the national scene as well as the business scene, who all they want to do is prey on people's fears. I've always believed in a lot of ways that those are the people who are most afraid. It's interesting that there's one of the things they talk a lot about in the show is because basically Camelot's about the creation of a new democracy. Doesn't exactly work out, but Arthur's idea of a round table is one in which everybody has an equal voice. The knights are not happy about that. And, and at one point, one knight says to the other, what doesn't concern me so much as the fact that they're going to allow people who are not as educated and to the manner born as we are, doesn't concern me so much that they're going to have an equal voice. What really concerns me is that there are more of them than there are of us. There was always a concept pre-Arthur. The idea is that might makes right, but the notion of Camelot is that might should be for right. Might for right. I'm not sure that how many people have learned that lesson, but that's a concept. And then finally, there is an exchange at the beginning of the show, which is wonderful, because the knights, again, they're all frantic because they're used to things being a certain way. And now they've got Guinevere coming from France, and she's going to be the new Queen of England. Arthur has these crazy ideas about democracy and that everybody should have a voice. And one of the knights says to another, England is changing too fast. And at that point, Merlin, who's on one side of the stage, looks at him and says two really important words: keep up. England is changing too fast. Keep up. Again, a message we can all take to heart, both in our businesses and in our lives. It's something we all have to do. We all have to keep up. Anyway, Camelot, a flawed production of a flawed show, but great business lessons from it. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.